It's our third live stream of New York Fashion Week, and our fabulous panel today is our stalwart Camilla Morton. We have Frances Corner, head of LCF, and the wonderful James Hudson, who is head of Whistles. Today we're going to be talking about the Theyskens Theory show. The first challenge of this broadcast was saying Theyskens Theory. I want to frame the discussion a little bit actually about wearable fashion and these designers who really built a career about fashion that's very much built on what women need and what women want and what sort of actual cool women are wearing, because that's something that's really integral to what he's doing. Are you guys fans of the label? Is it something that you find interesting?
Well, I think fashion needs to be wearable. When you at LCF, do you find when your students are designing, do they factor wearability into their designing? How important is it to them nowadays?
I think it varies. It depends on the students and what their motivations are. And obviously, the college has a reputation for developing students who out and go and work, very successfully in the industry. But we have students from 150 different countries, and I think what we're really trying to do at the moment is to get them to understand what fashion means within their country, but also bringing in their different references. So there's quite a sort of creative energy around that, and I think we also try and encourage them to rethink what women might want, what the industry needs, rather than thinking actually this is what's there out there already. It's how do you really understand how to construct really great garments that fit whatever your sort of motivation is and whatever your sort of silhouette and structures are going to be.
I'm interested that you said fashion that's relevant in your country, because this is something we've talked about sort of in both of the broadcasts we've already done, is this idea of fashion in different countries. And Ruth obviously made the point where she said we should look just at designers, but I think there is still this idea of there's different identities in different countries.
There are different, definitely. And I think that also, if you're working for a big global company, you know that there are certain things that are going to sell in one part of the world that isn't. You have to adjust the colour or the shape or the sizing or the amount of coverage that you might wish to have. And I think bringing that sort of understanding, and I think it's also quite interesting to see that the different influences that you'll get. We've done various projects, for example, around the role of the internet on modest dressing, for example, and the different sort of faith groups who can use online retail as a way of being able to develop new sort of looks, and then the influence that has back onto the catwalk or onto the way that designers are thinking. So I think there are some really interesting, so what's wearable or what's fashionable and what women want actually I think is opening out quite extraordinary, but what they want are well-made, good fabrics, colours that suit them, but with the opportunity to either have things that present a lot of coverage or don't, depending, for example.
When we say wearable, usually I guess we mean collections that have quite a lot of day wear in them that aren't too scary, and are not so red carpet driven, which certainly this does, but so many designers are so wearable. Stella McCartney's very wearable, Prada's very wearable, Miu Miu's very wearable. They're all, and I always think, whenever I think about wearability, I always come back to thinking that generally female designers tend to do it better than male designers, and I can only kind of rationalise that by thinking that is it because women actually design for people like themselves, women, and men design for a fantasy of a woman? Is that the difference? I don't think that's a generalisation.
But I don't think that wearability or commerciality should be necessarily a dirty word. I think that sometimes people do run a bit scared of it, but I think women know when you wanted to go a bit softer over the hips, how you wanted to go around the curves, where you want to frame it. And I think that actually the bigger influence that female designers have on the runway with Diane, with Victoria Beckham and people like that, I think they're starting to really affect the silhouette. I remember when Theyskens was at Russia, his silhouettes were exquisite, but they were so unattainably tiny, Edwardian little dollies that the modern woman couldn't. You couldn't empathise to that. Maybe somebody on the red carpet could work out or have enough surgery done that they could fit into it, but for the everyday woman it was an unattainable thing to be wandering around with a veil and a train. And I think to give Theyskens credit, I think it's very interesting the way he's reinvented himself from being a demi-couturist and being so sort of off on his own creative angle to come back and reinvent himself.
I think so. I think that's.
Total yin to yang.
I think that's what's very interesting, because personally I find the work that he's doing at the moment more interesting than the couture pieces are absolutely fantastic, but somehow he is bringing that element into his approach on more sort of ready to wear. And I think one of the, coming back to that discussion about what women want, I think it's also maybe the industry understanding that a lot of women want really good clothes that they can wear to work, as opposed to fashion always being about the fantasy element, and the idea about what it is to be a princess or to go down the red carpet, which is actually the reality is you've got a much bigger business and a much bigger industry for, if you're dressing for women. They do have jobs, funnily enough.
In a way, it's almost more impressive to create something that's incredible and perfect, but really relevant, than it is to create something that's incredible, but something like this where no woman will probably ever wear that unless
but I mean, Victoria Beckham is a great example.
Yeah, she's a great example.
Really wearable, but beautiful fabrics, beautifully cut. Yeah. And you would look amazing, but you could wear them to a meeting at work. You could wear them to work. I think I think that it shifted from evening wear being this thing that you can only wear on the red carpet, or if you're out running around losing slippers and being Cinderellas, to having smart day wear pieces and separates that you can mix and match it into modern life, because as you said, women do have jobs, they do have careers, they do have ambitions, and I think that as much as they want to have their muse on a pedestal and just paint them as some fainting creature, I think it's quite nice to show them also being out there, having a job, having a life, and conquering things. And I think actually the way he cuts, the way he looks at fabric, I think he's learned. I think it's really interesting, because a bit like You Must Have a LCF, you've taken something very creative and very extreme and sort of learnt the trade, and then sort of applied that rather than dilute it. I think it's applied.
Well, if you look at his dresses, this is from his own label from when he first started out, but if you look at his dresses, I think you can still see the general vibe and the aesthetic very much in what he creates today, and it's almost a process of growing up for him. I think the clothes he makes now, they're relevant, and I think what he did before, it was so theatrical.
I kind of always think about him though that he's done Rocha, he's now doing Theory. I always think that he's going to move on to a third place that's kind of somewhere in between those two aesthetics, and then
it's quite extraordinary that he's. Oh, thank you, Vicar.
Oh, lovely. I don't need any more.
Well, he does kind of throw in a couple of show-stopping gowns each season, even in Theory.
Yeah.
Well, also, I suppose when he's doing the red, I think the thing that designers can do nowadays is that they have their bread and butter ready to wear, and they have their collections. Oh, thank you, Shaky Cup. And then they have the pieces that they customise or they tweak slightly for the red carpet, for Michelle Obama, for one of those. They sort of like customise from the catwalk, so they start off with something very wearable and turn it into something more extreme. And I think that suits him better. I think when he was given all the keys to the candy shop, he went a little bit crazy, and I think actually it's a bit like setting quite a tough brief. I think it suits them.
I think that really great designers or people, they create within certain parameters. And if you can do anything, and you've got unlimited sort of access to workshops and materials and so on, actually you don't know where to start. Whereas the real, and it's much more difficult. And also to create beautiful pieces that somehow push fabric that isn't necessarily the top end, and actually make it really wearable. It's much more of a challenge. And then, but I agree, then to take those skills and then push them back out again, maybe into a third phase, would be, you could imagine that happening, because it's almost the combination of the two, isn't it?
I mean, do you find, Jane, when you're collating mood boards or you're sort of working on the direction of a new collection, you have an extreme idea and then you sort of work out how to, or
we do, but equally we have kind of all of our ideas in their purest form that we try to actually just create anyway, and then we sit down and say, okay, right, but we also know that we will always sell a bodycon stretch silk dress. So therefore, how do we then interpret those ideas into something that we know that is always wanted and people will always buy? So it's nice to have both. You can't sort of you can't box yourself in too quickly into sort of looking at the commerciality or the wearability. So you kind of have to let yourself have a little bit of fantasy first in a way, and then
that's the essence,
back down
isn't
to earth.
it?
And
Yes.
And that's kind of, I think, almost one of the most exciting parts of it is having those ideas and then saying, okay, and I suppose again it is giving yourself the parameters of well, it has to fit this woman and this woman and this woman, so therefore how do I make the two work without too much compromise?
I'm really interested that you brought up sort of your work at Whistles, because that's one thing I wanted to ask about a label like Theyskens Theory, where it's so focused on these kind of perfect day wear pieces for working women. And I think maybe this is a very sort of British perspective, but here we have such amazing offerings on the high street, that's so somewhere like COS or someone like Whistles, where it's almost kind of merging with higher end labels where you get these really perfect, really beautiful pieces. And do you think a label like this can sort of maintain a relevance, especially in the current economic climate where people are having to sort of turn to the high street more and think more about what they're spending their money on? Do people want to spend £300 on a pair of black trousers when they can spend 18, get a really nice
I think if they're good enough, I think if they're exciting enough, I think you can. And I do sometimes think that's a slight danger, that I will go into one of their stores and just not quite be excited enough. There's lots of stuff that kind of really works, is really great, clever basics, but emotionally it doesn't really get me, and I think there still has to be that emotional thing that really excites you enough to say, it is just like another kind of cropped, stretched leather trouser, but it's so sexy. It's just something about it that just makes you go, that's going to make me look so cool.
It's what we were saying about Victoria Beckham, even things like she does that really beautiful, quite strong zip down the back. There's something really sexy and really exciting about that. But it's still simple and it's still wearable. I do want to go back because I was really interested about it. We kind of moved on because we all had lots to say about this idea of women being much better at designing for women, and this kind of wave of designers like Phoebe and Stella who sort of came along and were just amazing and everyone loved them. Do you think that that's sort of forced a change in the industry for other designers to start looking and going, well, actually look at the success of Celine, we have to respond to
Well, I wonder whether it wasn't partly to do with the economic situation a bit. Because it kind of seemed to
tally.
Coincide. It did seem to coincide that actually people thought, well, you know what, I need to sell a lot of clothes. And how do you do that? Well, they've got to be clothes that women want to wear. I don't know, maybe that's being overly simplistic.
I mean, I think there has been a cultural shift in lots of different ways, isn't there? I mean, the fact that the industry understanding that there's a huge market there for women who want to have clothes that they can wear to work, that are beautifully made and that are quite expensive. I think there is some readjustment within the workplace in terms of what women can wear to work. Before it was very sort of traditional. You almost had, almost you couldn't wear trousers for a long, certain parts of the city. I mean, it's still a little bit like that, but suddenly there's some sort of women pushing at the sort of boundaries about
statistically there are going to be more and more female millionaires, billionaires, and there are a higher proportion of females in the workplace now. So maybe that shift has started to sort of like turn the power a bit more.
I think it has, and I think the other thing that also absolutely, I think the economic situation, how much you're prepared to spend, what is the relevance, being very ostentatious and having something which is a fantasy of what a woman wants isn't going to sell, and it's not somehow appropriate when there are a sort of austerity and so on. So the idea that you have things which are pared down much more and the beautiful materials that are going to last, I think it's sort of in a number of different ways. It's usually several factors that come together, isn't it, rather than it being one thing.
But also to slightly counteract that, I mean, even if it's an economic crisis or it's a disaster, you can't beat a well-cut Alaïa dress. And I think if you look at Beckham or you look at Roland Mouret, if you look at, there are men that do cut well, and if you look at an Alaïa dress, if I was making an investment, it would actually make good economic sense. I'm sure it would. I'm sure even my parents would agree after a while that it would really be good economic sense to do that Alaïa dress.
Even that, something like an Alaïa dress, it's a different kind of sort of want to buying something that's very extravagant.
Absolutely, that's what I was thinking.
But it's still want. It's a classic. It doesn't need to have all the whistles and bells on it. It just is.
But that's
the perfect silhouette. I think when a designer understands their signature as much as the silhouette, then you have something to hook on. I'm curious about today's inspiration being jellyfish. As a woman, I'm not sure I would want to be a jellyfish.
No.
No.
I wouldn't want my figure referred to as a jellyfish, so I'm
but then it's the nice
certainly curious.
In the ocean, you know, being this beautiful, free creature.
Ephemeral almost.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a bit like when you see jellyfish out of water.
Or you can think of thighs wobbling as they get out.
Or also when they've been stung and they're all sort of blotchy and red.
I mean, for me, it's not a brilliant analogy. But, you know, maybe that means that he's going to go to a curvier figure, which would be nice and voluptuous. And,
he always references his cool young girls.
Yeah,
when he's
well, now he's living in Manhattan. He's understood the New York shape. I don't know whether you find this, but I think you said at the LCF, different countries, they have different shapes and different things that they go for. In New York, you cannot move for girls wearing short shorts, whereas in London they look ridiculous. And I think there are different sort of uniforms.
There's still quite a few around
there. There are, whether or not they look ridiculous.
No, but those work shorts that they all wear, they all wear the city shorts over there, and I tried to wear them over here, and I looked like I had borrowed my brother's school uniform or something.
You mean because they have what kind of toned athletic?
No, they have different
bodies.
They have different shapes to us, and I think that he's following the sort of like the very sinuous New York shape, and I think it suits his very whimsical girls. And I think New York girls have got a strength, and they've got quite athletic bodies, and that with his girl, I think, is quite a good mix.
Yes, it's very sort of urban.
Yeah,
yes. It's a very urban
he said
look.
In an interview actually I was reading today, he said
about jellyfishes.
It wasn't actually about jellyfishes. He said if you say you're designing an urban collection, he was like, no one who designs anything for urban women would ever not look at New York, which I thought was such an interesting point. It's almost like he's fed by the city as much as he's sort of designing for the women there.
Yes.
Which, it made me think about this idea, and you mentioned it before when we talked about the internet and designers sort of having to respond to what people are buying, what people are writing about, posting about. And it is this idea of designers looking, going, well, actually look at all these cool young girls wearing sort of low-slung boyfriend jeans and t-shirts running about the city. I'm going to design for that. And I thought it was quite an interesting process of sort of democratization happening in fashion, where you can't just design the way he was doing it at Nina Ricci or the way he was doing it Washes, because you have to respond. And do you see that as a positive thing, this kind of dialogue that's happening?
I mean, yes, I do. I think it's, but I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's a mixture of both, isn't it? There are some, I mean, that seems to be the territory that he's going for. It's a bit like, as you say, he's spotted what's required and what's needed, and somehow his aesthetic sort of works with that. But I just wonder whether it could become a bit repetitive. That in a way it's such a look. I mean, that was the only thing. It's, you know, it is such a physical body type, and if you aren't that body type, you just can't get close to it. And that's why I think it's quite a narrow. Whereas I think the challenge, it's a bit like coming back to the point that Jane was making earlier. The challenge in a way is then also being able to develop a look which suits a different sort of age range, and also that is that different body types, and I'm not sure that his is one body type.
How do you do that?
But you know, you talk about him being very New York. I would say Whistles is London. It epitomises London. It's just and because maybe London is more. It's a bit of a cliche, but more eccentric, eclectic. It's more of a mix of different things thrown together a bit. But I also think there's still that urban feel that runs through it in the same way, that gives it a kind of a streamlined, sort of slightly minimal, sporty, for want of a better word, feel.
Those designers who are pushing that aesthetic here, other than places like Whistles, as you said, or. Because so many of the designers in London who are sort of a similar age range to Theyskens and would probably sort of put themselves on the same sort of plate of sort of young, exciting talent, they're not designing those kind of clothes, those kind of streetwise.
Well, this is very sophisticated New York. If you look at the new gen at Topshop, they're doing much wackier things than is doing for Theyskens. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but they're catering for different markets.
But could we see someone like Medium Kirchhoff suddenly turning around in 5-10 years, as he did, and doing something incredibly wearable, incredibly work
I think everybody needs to stick into their niche. I mean, this morning there was the Olsons did the row. They presented their collection, and this. I mean, the collection seemed to be grouped quite nicely so that all the things fall into the right little boxes. And I think it's a bit like a symphony or something that you're composing when you go to the shows. You start off with an overture of what's going to happen, then you build up to the first movement, then London's the second movement, Milan the third, then you get to Paris, and it's not until you've got the whole thing together that you can find the different characters and the different accents that are going to work for you. You can't say every time you're going to be here or there, or put people into different boxes, because I bet when this boy started, I bet when he was moving from Brussels to Paris to do Rocha and do demi-couture, he didn't for a million years think he was going to be at Theory.
If you looked at the around the time when he went to Theory, it was kind of, I know he'd done the capsule, but it was he'd been this kind of gothic, ultra.
But I mean, look how successful Hussein was for Say for a little while. You know, that was okay. He only wanted to do that for a brief while, but those were beautiful pieces.
But I think it's quite interesting when you think about the sorts of conversations that you're having around the Victoria Beckham show and the way that she's, you know, evolved from bit by bit. She keeps adding and experimenting, but somehow really developing a very sophisticated, beautiful, but again very New York. And you think that, but there's a sort of, I think her pieces appeal to people, women across the board, and across different nations, if you see what I mean. I mean, and you could also mix. You could take the look, or you could imagine that one or two of the jackets or whatever it is would go with something else that you might have. Whereas the only thing I feel with his is that it's such a look. I'm not sure how much you can mix it or how relevant it is for other people. And I think that's important. If you're going to really get, you know, a following and really be recognised on the world stage.
He's stayed true to his thing as far as he, you know, at least he's got a signature. I suppose, you know, you must when you're at LCF, you must have students that you think, right, she's going in that direction, he's going in that direction, he's going there. And I think if you can stick to the sail and the direction.
Oh yeah, I'm just thinking. I completely agree. I think it's very interesting. All I'm saying that I think it would be interesting to see how he pushes that look, and because otherwise you could. That's what I'm saying. Within her, what she's trying to define, she keeps pushing and sort of adding. How much is he going to be doing the same thing? Is what's going to be interesting, I think, in this collection today.
With her, she kind of adds something every season.
She does, yes.
A new type of object, like a bag or a coat or something.
Yes.
We haven't necessarily seen that with what.
Well, he's adding jellyfish this season.
You hate
it's a painful accessory.
I will be in a jellyfish by the end of the week. I can feel sure.
I want to pick up on something you said there, where you sort of talked about how he needs to learn to sort of increase his appeal to all different types of women, because I was wondering, if you look at other designers who are sort of pushing this kind of urban look, so someone like Alex Wang, whose show actually thought was amazing.
Oh, so done.
It was so beautiful. But this association between sort of wearability, streetwear, urban clothing, and youth, which I think is quite often something that you do see from these American designers, where it is supposed to be a wearable, kind of relevant collection, but it's very associated with a very slim, very young, very kind of that type of New York girl that we were all talking about. And do you think there are designers who are sort of making clothes that are relevant but to people of all ages?
Well, I think for me what's quite interesting is that as you evolve your style or as you get older, isn't it? You know, so if you've got the daughter, she might have the whole look almost, but you can imagine the mother who's really who has the jacket, and that's really what I'm trying to say. Rather, you know, is that sort of idea that you somehow, and I think that's quite important, because the other side of it is that you know you don't suddenly stop being interested in fashion because you hit 50 or whatever it is. You know, you just or 60 or whatever. You still want, you know, I still hope to be wearing, you know, when I'm 70, or a bit like Carmen Delafiche when I'm 80. And I think that's the, but inevitably your body shifts and changes, and it's not quite appropriate to be wearing the whole thing.
Yeah, no. There are certain looks, the jellyfishes aside, I wouldn't be wearing. I am nervous about the jellyfish, but I think he's going to do a good job with this jellyfish situation.
Francis, I want to talk to you a little bit about sort of the sustainability aspect, because I know that's something that you work a lot with. And this kind of collection where it's never a trend collection. You'd never sort of say this is what he's doing this season. There is this really key aesthetic. Do you see that kind of designer as something more positive?
Yes, I do. Yes, yeah, I do, because I think that's one of the big challenges for all of us is how do you evolve your style personally, and how does a company or a design evolve, and then how does that transcend, seasons and years, because in a way you've got a good aesthetic and you learn how to mix it and work with it, and I think that then means in terms of sustainability it works, because you're looking after things, and it's not the idea, well, 6 months ago I wore that, 6 months ago I can't possibly wear it again. Yeah. So I think that it is important. I mean, we all might have elements of that, but if it's good and you want to pass it on to somebody else, well, then that's the other side of it. Because I think we all know that if you're using good fabrics, then if you take it to a charity shop or you pass it on, it can actually be reused and reworn. But if it's very cheap and it's too out there, experimental, then in a way it's not going to work. Yeah. So I'm quite interested in how we play with those ideas, how designers play with those ideas.
Do you think that that's something that's not being focused on enough in London, where there's a lot of focus on kind of embellishment and excitement, and something that's very sort of...
It's very difficult. For me, it's a balance, because I mean, if we all go, it's not like we're advocating hair shirts and really sort of, it's all got to be really sustainable and totally recycled. I mean, that's just not going to happen. But for me, it's much more that people are conscious when you're buying something, what that means to you within your wardrobe. Yes, of course, we all make mistakes and we all go and buy things that are a bit out there, but essentially you're much more considerate about your clothes. So that's why I think the whole movement for what do women want and what's wearable and what's important actually is much more sustainable, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, it's like your Alive dress last year for season.
Yeah, my Alive dress.
Your Alive dress,
for life.
For life, yes.
No, I do. I mean, I remember he made me one time, and I went into the studio and he fitted it to me, and I had gone in there totally not to buy a dress, but as he cut and fitted it, no, it didn't take long. It was as soon as I got undressed I realised that but it's when you see somebody fit something and understand a body so well and understand your body better than you understand it, then you realise that the shape is going to work. Because I think as you get more and more used to your body, or as you get more and more used to designing for women's bodies, as Olivier is designing for women's bodies, and he becomes more aware of the shapes that work and the shapes that don't, I think you do learn more. I know I used to, one of my friends is the designer Takun, and I know when he first started he was doing clam diggers and all these sort of like stressful fabrics for trousers, that as a woman you couldn't wear sort of bulky things down there because it would just sort of poof sideways. But now he's doing these beautiful light dresses, and the cut and the drape he did yesterday was beautiful. And I think women designers have sort of got an advantage, because at the moment they are sort of being highlighted almost, because they are able to drape and cut and know which bits are going to work and which bits aren't. And I think the boys are doing really well. They're kind of building their fantasy woman and not understanding our bodies. And I think that it's trial and error. It's like buying a pair of jeans. Buying a pair of jeans will always be a nightmare to do. It will be an unpleasant experience. And once you find your brand, you stay with it. So if this man does the pair of trousers for you, and then he suddenly veers off and puts jellyfish wings down the side,
you're going to be alarmed.
You're going to have a problem for a season.
Real problem.
Do you think consumers are getting, especially female consumers, do you think they're getting more, I wouldn't say more difficult, but more confidence in the way they shop? And
well, I think it's not that they're getting more difficult. I think with the internet, with access like this, I think it isn't just the fashion critic that decides what's going on. More and more we're getting so well informed that we're becoming such harsh critics and such difficult shoppers, because we're the more educated and informed we become on our subject, the more we demand and the more we understand cut, and
we've seen it, we know what it's supposed to look like.
We've seen it. We want real cashmere, we don't want poly. Why can't cashmere do this? Why can't I throw that in the wash? Why can't I, you want easy clothes that you can shove in the wash and not shrink. You don't want to pay £2,000 for a t-shirt that's been embroidered with a paillette, and then at the same time you want somebody to tell you that a nun has spent 72 days hand stitching this while she wept over Shakespeare sonnets as she embroidered this story. So you want the story and the fantasy as much as you want the practicality. And I think the internet makes you want more. And the way these shows are thrown up and spat out in a second, I remember when I started writing reviews, you'd go to a show, you'd sit at it, you'd absorb it, and then you'd go home and you'd write it up, and then maybe 3 months later somebody would read the review, or you'd stand in R.D. Franks and wait for Collezioni to come out and flick through it and work out what was going on. Before, it was the end of the world if you missed a show, whereas now you just go put it in Google, and as much as it makes it easier for people, I think it also makes it harder for the designers to constantly reinvent, but also it means that you're much pickier when you're shopping. I mean, when you go on the internet, you're like, don't like that, like, don't like this, and you're much more, you've become so uber critical now that I think it makes it really challenging, because they notice if a hair or a hemline is slightly tweaked, then they're not backwards with their opinions.
But on the flip side of that, you mentioned the internet, how people can go on and there's so much choice and there's so much sort of there in front of them and so much information. But on the flip side of that, do you think that's making people even more sort of hungry and much more throwaway in that attitude? Like,
no, I sounded a little bit granny there. I mean, I think the internet is a marvellous invention, and I think it's very good. No, there are pros and cons to everything, but I think, I think it's great that you can access it, but I also think you shouldn't be, you should be, I don't know.
You have to know how to use it.
You have to know how to use it and do your research.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you were setting projects, you can't just type in Google the answers. You have to go to libraries, museums, galleries. You have to, and I think you can see people that really do the research, that know their facts, that do sort of get involved from every single angle. And I think that's, you shop with, if you're a shopper and you're an informed shopper, you find the right pieces and you can mix high street with high fashion, with this, with that, and you can sort of juggle your budgets around. And I think it's like with everything, the more informed you are, the better.
I do think you're right in a way that, some of these websites, they've got thousands and thousands of lines and send you an email every day saying, we've got this new, we've got this new, we've got this new. You are completely bombarded, and buying online is not the same, is it? We all know it's not real money, you know what I mean? It just doesn't feel like it. So I think it does kind of generate that desire to just keep consuming and keep, I'm just going to get that, I'm just going to get that. And these people sort of talk about having wardrobes full of clothes that they've never ever worn, which you kind of think, God, that sounds terrible. I think online shopping actually does propagate that a little bit.
Although I know of people who spend a whole day sort of shopping online, but then of course emptying their basket. They don't actually, so they go and sort of select it all, and then they just sort of very sadly.
No, I have.
What's that, Internet Anonymous or something?
No. I have little fantasy spends where I put it all in my basket, and then at the end of the day I'm quite over the look, because mentally I've already worn it and I'm done with it.
Then of course you get retargeted, don't you, with a little note at the bottom. Like,
oh no.
That's like, you looked at this Elia dress. You looked at this Elia dress.
I know,
but at the end of the day,
they're clever. They've worked out how to tap into the female psyche of, oh gosh, and they give you a little note. But there is nothing like going into the shop and having that emotional interaction with an experience with trying something on, or slipping your foot into a shoe, or finding something that just makes you feel just so. And it is, I mean, there are references that I like, but it is like having a Cinderella moment where you put that perfect shoe on, or you find that pair of trousers that makes your bum look just so, or it tilts your curves just so. And you watch all these photos because you're doing endless research to find it, without sounding like the vainest person in the entire world. And it's sort of, it's all preparing for Camilla's moment as a jellyfish.
But I think with a designer like Theyskens, but also the theory label as a whole, actually, I think that's kind of what they're trying to say. They're trying to.
Well, it's a really exciting label now. If you look on Net-a-Porter and the places that stock it, the way the theory label as well as Theyskens for theory, it's a really great label to sort of like pepper your wardrobe with, and it's not too ouch.
I think that's the thing. I mean, pepper your wardrobe, I think, is absolutely, because in a way, without wanting to in any way be derogatory, it's sort of quite safe. You know that it's going to be, that there'll be key pieces that you can put in there if you're not going to go for the whole look.
It's like you're building a band. You need to have a good base, and that's a good solid base that, right, you know you're going to be safe there. Then you can pepper it with a crash on the cymbals with a good piece of jewellery or a groovy accessory. And I think I think Theory offers really good pepper pieces.
Pepper pieces. Yeah, but I think that they're actually so good because of the attention to detail.
Would you like more tea?
That puts into it. You know, the little sort of V detail at the back of the neck.
And so the perfect pleat.
Yeah, so I think otherwise they would be perhaps a little bit
just
safe or basic. Yes.
But do you think that not enough designer labels or labels showing across fashion weeks at all are doing that? Oh, thank you. Are focusing on making items that people can sort of bring into their own wardrobe and wear with the clothes that they already love?
I think increasingly designers are doing that. They're finding their own sort of piece that they will always put in, like Richard Nicol will always have a beautiful shirt and that you would want to put in your wardrobe, you know. So I think that, I think most designers are certainly aware of that. Yeah, very much so, And in fact, you know, whenever you're putting a collection together, it's kind of, you have to get those pieces, you know, those pieces have to be absolutely right, you know, then you can have fun with all the rest of it on the top.
Do you build from those pieces or do you drop them in?
We do, we start from the top and then we build up from the bottom at the same time.
So
and then they kind of, meet in the middle and then you're, is that, you know, how does that feel? How does it look? Has it have balance? Does it have, you know, have we answered all the questions that needed to be?
And how helpful are shows like this to you? Do you enjoy watching the shows, or your collections, you're already so far in advance?
Ours is already produced, so of course it's interesting. It's interesting to see how someone else has interpreted the same influences that we've had, and which direction they've taken them in. I think, obviously we would be disappointed if we found someone who had interpreted it exactly the same way. But
would you be disappointed, or would you not think, yes?
Well, it depends who it was, really.
Exactly.
Philo, I'd be delighted.
What about colours? I mean, talking about the gender.
Yes.
I didn't think you would actually. But that's quite interesting, isn't it, to see that sometimes you're getting certain themes.
Didn't you find though that of course everybody
some weird
comes up?
It's some like
Everyone did Paisley that one season. I was like, did you all just wake up?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, but
and the answer is yes. Well, we did.
It's, you know, I mean, maybe because of the Olympics, there's going to be a more body-conscious, sportive theme coming through. You know, the season that Gladiator was out at the cinema, there seemed to be a heck of a lot of heroes running around.
Was that all the Games of Thrones collections?
I don't know. I mean, they always sort of like pull it from somewhere. The
Mad Men.
You know, there was the Great Gatsby moment. There was the Mad Men moment. You know, I think we always have something in the ether that inspires us, and then we just sort of do our versions of it. I mean,
and also there isn't. It's not. I mean, the pajama thing was a specific thing. Okay, everybody suddenly. But I think wasn't that driven by a silhouette change in a sense. You know, of that kind of wearing the loose trouser top instead of a dress somehow. It's suddenly seen, and maybe that came from maxi dresses. I don't know, but you know, it's kind of a move on. But I think colour in some ways, it's sometimes you look at someone's collection and you think, okay, well they've covered every colour, but then you look at a magazine and they'll be going, it's all about blue, purple, whatever, and they've just gone through every okay, we'll have a blue bit here and one bit. And it isn't necessarily what's in the collection.
Do you think shoppers even pay attention to that anymore?
I do.
I think so.
Do they?
Yeah, I think they do. I think they do.
Yeah,
well, we get asked questions in stores by customers who will say, you know, blue is the colour of the season and you haven't got anything.
Because when we were talking about the internet, I was finding that interesting because you do get this immediacy with the internet, and there's less of that waiting for your monthly magazine to come and tell you like these are the trends of the season. You can kind of decipher them for yourself.
Yeah, well, I think whether you're seeing this online or in a magazine, I'm kind of you know, not distinguishing between the two.
And I think also that you know, watching the online, yes, of course, there are a lot of women and shoppers who will be doing that, but there's also an awful lot who won't.
Yeah.
I think that you know there are, and so I think that, and they will be looking. They'll be more traditional in getting their magazines and not waiting to be told, but sort of looking, not wanting to make a mistake. And if you're investing in something, you know, it's wanting to make sure actually
have I got idea. If I'm going to buy some shoes this season, so what are all the trouser shapes and what are all the skirts? And therefore,
anyone says to you when they say, "What do you do?" You say, "I work in fashion." You go, "What should I buy this season?"
Yes, you are. It's there. Yeah.
But you think with something like Theory, I think what's interesting is I think it's almost a label that's a sign of the times, and his career, if you look at it, it's kind of going from this demi-couture, as Camilla mentioned, into actually clothing that has to be relevant. And it brings in this debate that we'll probably save for Paris a little bit, but I do want to talk about kind of the future of these demi-couture and couture in general, because the fact he's moved, he didn't even do trousers at Rochas for like a huge number of seasons when he was there, and now he's doing jeans and trousers and work trousers every season. And is that a sign of the times?
I don't think it's a sign of the times. I think it's a sign of maturity. I think he's realised that we can't all float around in a ball dress all the time.
But do you think that reflects a change that's happening across the industry?
I think it reflects society. I think that at the moment we're sort of holding back. But there's this fabulous quote that Stephen Jones said, and it's a credit, not a creative crisis. And I think that actually when there are things like that in society, I think you look back and it's always the times where you think the credit or the economy is all a bit iffy, that it pulls everything back and spits out a new movement. And fashion's such a cyclic thing. It always evolves in one way or another. And maybe we're just going through a bit of a transition. We might be going to a grunge, we might be going to opulence. You know, we're just sort of like passing through a phase at the moment. We're just sort of going through a shift.
Where do you see it going?
Well, I mean, I'm still waiting for my jellyfish, but you can't say where you see it going on the third day of New York. It's too early in the game to see where it's going. I think empowered, strong women, not twiglets. I think quite sort of. I think women are quite the thing at the moment. I think that there are quite a lot of iconic, strong females dominating things at the moment, and I think that that's what people are looking at. You have Kate Middleton here, you have the Olympic Jessica Ennis, you have Michelle Obama, you have all these great strong women that are good role models and icons, and I think that they're the women that are leading it.
I think that's very true.
I think it's very true,
and I think it's very different from sort of 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's completely different.
More Paris Hilton or
I mean, you still got that. I mean, there are obviously lots of debates, and we have them at college around, you know, the representation of women in the media, you know, sexualisation, all of those sorts of aspects. But I think there is definitely, again, a more seriousness, a shift. And I think that, as you're saying, you know, the Olympics and all of that aspect does influence how people view. You know, you think about Victoria Pendleton and
but you know, look at all those women. I was very struck at the Olympics looking at all those women with incredible bodies, you know, amazing six-packs, but really strong, powerful, beautiful women.
And I think that's the issue about the twiglets, because I think there has been a sort of move away
from
I mean, we did the show that we had, BA show in June. We had 90 models, 60 of which were all street cast, because actually we wanted, again, much better ethnicity, different sorts of sizing, different sorts of ages, and I think it gives us a rawness to the shows, which is actually, and the sense that yes, everybody loves fashion and everybody can wear it. And I think that's the interesting thing, and I think as you say, the Hillary Clintons, you know, the sort of very strong women politicians and also women within the media are going to want to wear clothes that reflect their strength of personality.
Yeah, you don't want to look like a dolly if you go into mean business.
No. And also it's that idea that fashion actually isn't frivolous, and I think those kind of women, they do champion fashion, and we talked about this.
Yes, we did.
And no one would look at Samantha Cameron and say she's like trivialising fashion. She makes it seem something that's important. And taking sort of a broader step back and moving away from sort of the season, but looking at maybe the last 5 years, the last decade, you can almost say it's the labels that have focused on those strong women rather than any particular silhouette, or even definitely not a price point, that have done really well. So Celine, which is a completely different price point to say Philip Lim, both of which have done really well.
Absolutely.
Although Diane, she stayed at an attainable price point, and she is, I mean, the more time you spend with her, the more you want to hang around with her, because she's so empowering as a female, Diane von Furstenberg as a woman, and her wrap dress, it basically does what it says on the tin. And I think Stella, she keeps it at a nice, good price point, and of course you want to be part of her gang because she's done it really well. And I think that they're women that you want to be friends with. Like, it's not that you want to be friends with them. I mean, who cares about hanging out with people? But it's that you think that they're great role models. They're not people that you can put on a pinboard and think, oh, well, she looks fabulous. You're looking at 3D women. You're looking at their character and brains as well as their figure.
And people are even excited by that sort of old-fashioned view of femininity, that kind of the twiglets. Do you think that's completely gone now? If you look at even something like J Crew, their adverts, which use sort of real exciting women from the industry,
Yes.
do you think that kind of old twiglet obsession is completely gone?
I don't think it. I think there'll always be a bit of it that's around. I think it's shifted.
I think beauty is shifting. It's not the body shape. It's that beauty is shifting. I think you will always have beautiful women. You will always have a model that comes along every now and then that is like an electric shock that just blows you away. There is always a model each season that you just is perfect for that season. And I think that now, though, because women are wanting to be more involved and because the internet is pulling us in and making us more involved, I think real women are becoming more relevant as a muse than before. It would have always been a certain model, a certain muse, a certain picture on the wall. And I think it's that three-dimensional character.
But what about the...
Wow, a lot of tea.
I think one of the... we're talking very much within the sort of fashion terms, but if you're thinking also there are a lot of women who are very influenced...
What do you want me to do?
By the whole, big hair, big lips, big breasts, long nails, which in a way is almost an idealised version about what a woman, a different sort of idealised version, as opposed to couture. And I think I think we can forget that actually within our world, we're looking for a certain type of woman who wants to dress in a particular way, but there is there are a lot of women out there who are going not exactly on the sort of Jordan, Katie Price, but maybe again that's also an influence that's sort of lessening. But that has been quite a problem. That whole sort of the glamour model influence.
There's an amazing book, you've probably read it. It's Living Dolls.
Yes, I have. Natasha Ward. No, she's brilliant.
Yeah.
No, we had a debate on the age of beauty, and she was one of the members, and she's really good. The whole new feminism.
But I think you're right, it is actually really easy for us to forget that, and we think of this idea of kind of the Stella McCartney woman who's wearing these clothes that she feels really empowered going to her job, but there is that kind of
there's a lot
to fashion, and it is fashion because it's retail.
Of course it is,
Well, it's all the pink, isn't it? And it's the worrying about all the young girls that's what they somehow are sort of encouraged to the whole idea of being a tomboy and all of that sort of thing. Somehow there's a lot of peer pressure in that respect, and I think.
But interestingly, I don't think those are necessarily weak women either.
No,
I think
they're not.
They're strong women too. They're just
going for a different look.
Exactly. They're interpreting it in a different way.
So we're starting to see a few pictures. Because I notice we're doing power shoulders, but very different from the power dressing of Ivana Trump days.
They're coming in sets.
Okay.
So this is opening look. Very workwear as well.
Yes. Yeah.
We've only got the first set of images in, not all of them yet.
Okay.
Do we know what music they played?
I don't know what music they played. We know it's the jellyfish.
I can't see anything remotely jellyfish-like. Yeah.
Maybe with the wet hair.
Maybe. Oh yeah.
But I think it was more the idea.
It's more tailored.
Yeah, very tailored. He's done the pleats again, which I think is interesting.
It's a leather shirt, and is it a jumpsuit?
I think it is a jumpsuit with a jumpsuit resort, which I actually loved. Is
it treated denim or is it leather?
I think it's leather.
I think it's leather. Yeah, it could be waxed denim though.
Could be.
But he did those amazing jumpsuits for resort that were meant to look like you were wearing a jumper tied around your waist.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
It's less sort of skinny twiglet look.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Very androgynous.
Yeah, should we go back to that?
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? Actually,
that's beautiful.
It's like another parka, really simple.
Again, the shoes. This actually reminds me of the Victoria Beckham. Taking away from these spindly heels. So that's what I was really expecting from Victoria Beckham because it's what she wears herself.
Yes.
She's got those flat, quite androgynous and almost kind of like the Christopher Kane ugly shoes. Kind of,
I almost wondered if she'd been persuaded by someone.
No, I don't think so. I think no, it was all part of the tag.
I really actually liked the shoes.
Yeah, no, I think it was all the strength, and I think it was quite a deliberate thing from the reviews and pieces I read.
Well, she's got stronger, hasn't she? I think I don't want to go back too much to Victoria.
Sorry,
I love her.
Yes.
She has got sort of more daring. Like
strength comes in confidence. I think she's got more confidence. This is a confident collection as well.
I think it is. I think it's
nice.
more
It's a really modern. It's an urban does have a touch of Anne de Meulemeister and Helmut Lang, and it's bringing in all the good elements of them, but giving them good,
in
strong
a way,
shoulders
back
and
to the Belgian look, the heritage he has, really, which I think is quite interesting.
On Twitter, people were saying it's a glamorous and modern Morticia Adams, which I quite liked.
Yeah. Yes. That's. I'm preferring the more modern pieces to the tailoring. Actually, I think they look really nice, new.
Very fluid,
sexy.
I don't think I'd say it was a glamorous Morticia Adams. I think would say it was more a young. I don't think I'd say it was more youthful, but not glamorous.
I think
so far
less youthful than his collection before. You know, we've had collections with the incredibly sort of low slung trousers.
I quite agree. I mean, that's the thing that I going back to some of the conversations just been having around what do women want. As opposed to the younger, you know, the sort of teenager or the young 20s.
But this is a symbol of our time. You mentioned this before with the mother wearing the jacket and the daughter wearing the whole look. I think there's much more fluidity in like you get.
Oh, no question.
Like I shop in the same shops that my mum shops in, you know, and I don't think that was the case 10 years ago.
No, definitely not. Died rather than do that. Speaking from the daughter, never mind about the mother.
But do you think that's a really positive change?
I do think it's very positive. I really do. I mean that was one of the things that we talked about in the Beauty of Age debate when Natasha and Harriet Walter was there as well, and that was one of the themes, the idea that actually you just want to keep pushing what's possible, but obviously within parameters of accepting the fact that you are getting older, but you're not falling off your perch, and you're not wanting, fashion isn't dead to you. It's actually something that's really still really important, but you want things reflect the fact that you perhaps need more, you need longer sleeves or not such a short skirt, but you want really good materials and things that are really beautifully cut.
Do you find that at Whistles? Do you have a huge...
It's funny actually, as a retailer, I love it. Of course I love it. Mothers and daughters shopping at the same time, it's great. It's really good for us, and we get... They buy them in very different ways. They buy the same product in very different ways. I kind of feel, as a teenager, I was really rebellious, and I kind of feel. Where's that gone? Yes, I think I love that rebelliousness, and that when you're a teenager, you have totally your own fashion that's just yours, and it's completely different, and it's really exciting, and you can just break all the rules, do whatever you want. So I find that quite exciting too. I mean.
But that's a place for
both. Well, I think there's a little bit of that.
There's a little, but not in the level that there used to be, and I think that was also partly because you got older. Yeah, we did, absolutely.
Which was just fantastic.
I mean, you also had Bieber and Last Stops, and you had all of these sort of things going on, and I think now designers do cater for more ages better, and it's less sort of less divided.
Less need for that.
Yeah, well, it's that whole sort of boom generation, not getting older. You're not suddenly going to go into beige just because you've reached a certain age.
If you had all this fabulous choice, why are you suddenly going to go to become Mrs. Bland? You wouldn't want to go back to that. Has Ollie done any more looks?
Yeah, should we keep going?
That's nice.
Yeah. See, I love something like that.
Was that knitwear, and that's a soft drape with a body?
That's quite huge.
Yeah, that's charming.
That's very if I may say so, Francis.
Yes, I take that.
Everybody's, the 3 shows we've done has done such a restrained palette. Considering it's spring-summer, it's
spring-summer. Do you think it's a reaction to this spring-summer, which was kind of colour overload?
It was colour overload,
And now we're all very...
Because even we all said that when we watched the Jason Wu show, we all said it.
Yeah. But also I wonder whether that comes back to the austerity credit aspect, that people just playing it a little bit safer.
Well, you saw that with the menswear, overseas printed suits, just everyone. But it was that kind of safety aspect.
It is, because if you're going to invest, or you're going, people will go for that because they'll know it will last and it's not going to date. Where if you've got very strong colour or pattern, it's much harder.
Maybe you're just meant to pop it with accessories or something.
Yes. And I think there is almost obviously this is outside of fashion, but there is almost a snobbery to when you see women and they're so clearly wearing something that's very on trend, and it's not seen as cool in the way that it was. Sort of previously, if you were wearing something that's very fashionable, that was quite an exciting thing. Whereas now, if you look
a bit desperate.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at even things like the street style blogs, which a lot of people would say sort of push these trends, but actually if you look at something like Tommy Tong or the Sartorialist, the kind of people that are getting shot there are people that have a very obvious personal style.
Personal style, absolutely.
And I think there's never been more of a focus on personal style.
But I think
than there is
when
now.
it was logomania and everybody wandered around carrying, you know, identifying themselves with different groups, with different, you were becoming a tribe to a different label, and now it's about the power of your own personality rather than letting a designer stamp you. And I think that everybody now is designing knowing that it's about the personality that wears it, not the label.
Yeah.
I think the label has to have a lesser personality now.
I think the really interesting thing, you know, the Kusama sort of link with Louis Vuitton and the fact that that's sold out, and you think, well, there she is, and again coming back to this idea about strong women who've had a really powerful influence. I mean, she's the most fantastic creative powerhouse, an extraordinary exhibition at the Tate, and you feel, well, there she does this collection with Louis Vuitton and it's completely sold out. You know, you think that there is something there, and it's you know, it's obviously very idiosyncratic and reflects the sort of person that she is. So I think it's quite, you know, it's quite interesting what's happening, isn't it? The shift that's going on about a sort of, you know, a style, and I mean hers is so obvious. You know, you're going to buy that bag or whatever it is, because knowing that people understand, and again you're also making a reference to there's somebody who's been, you know, but so influential in terms of the work that she's done on other artists.
And that's really also, it's exemplified by this kind of Celine mania, which I think is such an interesting mania, because people talk about this kind of this decade as being the it bag decade, but actually if you look at Celine, it's so unbranded, and it's so, I think it's so interesting that it's gone from 5 years where everyone was kind of breaking their arm with the Chloe Paddington bag, whereas now Celine's what everyone wants, and it's what everyone, it's what sort of 18-year-old girls want as well. Right up to women who are sort of 50, 60, 70.
Do you think it still is the cult of Celine? Do you think that's the label that's still dominating?
I think if you speak to, speaking to sort of women my age, and they want Celine wallets, and even if they don't work in fashion.
Really?
Yeah. And it's
what do you think?
I think that I just think that this season there's going to be a big shift, and I think we can't know till we get there, but I think with the new person at Dior and the new person at Saint Laurent, it will shift to the biggest luxury houses, and they make such important sales through their bags and accessories. There's going to be a new it bag, and I think that because Celine is so chic, so plays it down, doesn't sort of court publicity, doesn't court the red carpet, I think that actually stronger women are starting to pip forward. I think that Celine is very understated, and I don't think it's quite the cult thing that I mean, it's not to say that it's not doing great pieces, it's still a really strong, and I think it's very aspirational for those in the industry, but I think actually if I was you know, logging on watching shows, I would be looking at my Beckhams and my YSLs and my Prada first, and I would sort of work out if I could do a version of that, if not scrap that, you know, and I would wiggle from that direction. I think that Celine is very hard to rip off because it's a sort of aspirational label, but it's, you know, it's the drape of that shirt or that trouser. You can't sort of fake
hard
that.
to rip off, but a million people have been influenced by it.
No,
in such a huge way in terms of silhouette and just paring everything down.
Yeah, I mean, she's stripped it down to such a sort of elegant level, and she's pulled it all back. But I wouldn't say she was just the one. I think there's much more of a sort of cosmopolitan feel about it now. I think that there are sort of a group of people now. Got any more looks? Because I'm not keen on the grey trousers.
I haven't seen the...
Oh, here we go.
I'm getting the jellyfish thing though. I'm getting that idea of glowing, kind of walking through the streets.
I actually think the jellyfish is a bit of a red herring. I don't think jellyfish is very good. I think that was somebody pulling your leg, because I think press releases are very dangerous. Sometimes they send you off on some extraordinary mission, and you're trying to desperately claw the reference of a jellyfish into something where it isn't there. I think
it's the wet hair.
I mean, I like the front pleat on the trousers. I think that new cut of black trousers is really nice, and I like the side pleat. It'd be nice if we could see a side view of it.
He did a last season as well. It was really, really beautiful. I was just saying, this is cut glass stitched on, which goes back to this idea of his sort of perfect day, where, you know, demi-couture as much as it can be. And
that would be practical.
Maybe that's the jellyfish thing, the stinging.
The stinging, yes.
There it is.
If you were stood next to that too close on the bus. See, that's beautiful drape there. Nice shorts.
Got the grey hair.
Short length.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as anything else, these shows are sort of a mood board to show the vibe of the whole season.
Exactly,
you know.
Yeah. I think the muted palette is really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's really
That's one,
chic.
it is,
It
yes.
is a bit of a Yoji sort of type feel, isn't it? It's really nicely
Lots
pared
of the fabrics
back.
are three-dimensional as well.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, this is the last look that we've had in so far. We'll have to wait for a second batch, but we can go back through and have a closer look. But you're right with the muted palette, it is so simple.
But then in theory, have never really used
He's
colour,
done- he's
have
done
they?
red.
And they
A
had
little
those
bit, a
green
little
sort
bit.
of...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not a bright label.
No.
But I think, as we were saying, it's all across New York.
Yeah.
Well, there were a few exceptions yesterday
With Zach posing.
with Zach, Diane, and Takumi.
Diana,
but
yes.
Do you find that at Whistle?
I
Do you
like
find
that jacket
with
very
the
much.
muted?
I like that double-breasted
really
This
jacket.
summer,
And it's
this
just
summer we just
very-
had, it was all about colour.
Sort of
And the shoulders
comfortable.
make
So
really
blank
nice.
tall,
Really
it was
nice.
all
It's
about,
lovely.
just wanted colour.
Do you think that's a response to trends?
I think the whole colour thing is, I think each season is almost a reaction on the previous one in a sense. And I also think, my personal theory about last summer, why colour was so important, was that we'd had a series of really terrible summers and it was all a bit depressing, and everyone just thought, oh God, you know what, I just want to wear bright yellow this year. I don't care, I'm just going to go out and wear it. I think everyone just felt the need to just, inject some colour into their wardrobe if nowhere else.
Yeah.
And so colour was just phenomenal, and we just could not sell things that were black.
Really?
No, they just wouldn't sell at all.
Obviously didn't come
If
along.
you we had two dresses, one in bright yellow and say one in black, and the black one wouldn't sell at all.
Really?
And now, as soon as we got back into autumn, black is now starting to sell again. And
I
so
suppose
it kind of depends.
Yeah.
But next summer we're looking at a much more neutral palette with highlights of colour just sort of thrown in. So because we feel again, I suppose, that people might be a bit sick of it. And,
So what were our first reactions to the collection? We all seem
I like it. I think they're really strong pieces. I like the double-breasted slouchy jackets. I like the pleated and the pants.
Yeah.
I think they're really great sort of separates that you can pepper with. I like the muted palette, but then again, I don't suppose you'd want something too shocking and jarring with the whole situation. I think it's a soft, easy silhouette to do. I like that it's looser than he usually does.
That's what I like about it, because that's the thing I was a bit concerned that we were going to get more of that, whereas this, I think, is, in a way, is more confident. It feels less sort of
because he
controlled
doesn't.
and
I think
contrived.
you're right, because I think sometimes to do something that looks easy is a lot more complicated than something that's really fussy.
You know, that the jacket that you were saying, that's really hard.
Yeah,
to
beautifully
make
cut.
work,
Yeah,
and it was really.
some more looks.
Yes.
It's very 90s, isn't it? That sort of billowing.
and that raglan sleeve going through.
So you're saying
That's cute.
he's gaining
That's just
confidence. Where do you see him going? Because we all kind of said this as how do you move on from sort of doing these neutral, these classics, and how does he continue?
But I said this the other day. I think I always think it's a bit of a nightmare to say where are you going next when this hasn't even hit the shops. I think you should sort of almost savour the collection and the point that you're at the moment. And the trouble with, not the trouble, but one of the things with the internet is you see this and you're over it by the end of the day, and this isn't going to hit the stores for another couple of months. And I think that rather than move him forward, I think he should, he's trying to predict the future, and he's making his case for what he thinks is going to be next spring summer. And I think it's wrong to ask people what they're going to do next when they've just sort of like cut their heart open.
I think the thing that for me that's quite interesting is the nature of the fabrics. In a way, yes, it's muted, but actually because of the way he's playing with the cut glass.
Is there a way to zoom and see the fabric details?
But you can see that, and I think that's quite, because it feels like that again is some of the influence from his
former lives,
coming through both in terms of the sort of Belgian but also the French experience, and maybe that's one of the things that will be pushed still further, because I agree it's a bit like you want to see it and try some things on and
exactly.
just get an idea.
It's softer, isn't it?
I think it's softer.
It's a much softer feel, and it feels a bit more experimental, as if he has kind of just pushed it a little bit further away from what we see as being, which was kind of always like the very tight
well, it's
tight
less
jeans,
aggressive and angry. I think he's sort of relaxed into himself a bit
sportier, a bit more,
without sounding too pompous towards him.
I think there's.
I don't wholeheartedly love it, I have to say. Some of it doesn't really work.
You can have a look at some of the closer up looks. That's the double breast.
I think it would. I think you could see lots of people buying. I mean, that jumper and.
But this goes back to what I was asking, is something like a black jumper, do you not think people are so much more confident in the high street now than they would if they wanted a beautiful black jumper?
That you could probably buy in about 5 or 6 different shops this week. So for me,
that's where you have to see it though, isn't it? Because it will
you need
depend
to
on the
feel
fabric.
it. I mean, I can't bear itchy things.
I think that I love that. I do love that.
I love that.
That's great.
I love that blue.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Was that the little?
Yeah,
that looks like him.
A little
the girl looks like him. He's designing for himself.
Like him, yes.
Again, something like that it's something that will probably sell and everyone will love, and it's probably beautiful made. But it is this idea of, I think in England people are so much more confident in going somewhere like Collars or Whistles and getting that.
Yeah, but it could have a real little jazzy, kooky thing that you just don't realise.
I think you have to.
You have to see it or feel it.
Or it does the fabric, isn't it?
I mean, look at those.
I really like
those shoulders are beautifully done.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see the cut glass.
Yeah.
Oh, and then he's got his bag. That's interesting.
Yeah. It's kind of anti-it bag.
Will be the new it bag.
See, that's probably quite interesting actually. Go back that one.
It's got a little panels at the back as well, and the drop hemline as well. Drop hem.
Yeah, you can see. So it is those little details, I think, with his clothes. As you put them on, you do just feel absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Shall we have a pause while we wait for more images?
Okay.
Should we have a little pause, guys?
Oh, we're allowed to have a pause.
Oh yeah, we're allowed to pause. We're back with more Theyskens theory, so we've managed to relocate the rest of the looks, so we can continue going through. We're back with our beautiful textured looks.
And our beautiful panel.
And our beautiful panel, sorry guys, that was not nice of me.
Yeah, we just had a little disco pause and now we're jumping on.
Now we're back.
And it was worth waiting for.
Looks.
Yeah, I like these ones.
Yeah.
I like that trench.
I like that
really
too, it's nice.
It is dark, you're right.
You'd never think
it doesn't look like a spring-summer collection.
No.
Also, it would help the photographers if it wasn't a blacked-out background.
That is something that's interesting with thinking of how many people now do view fashion online.
Yeah.
Do you think that designers are going to have to become more
Yeah,
considerate of how their collections
but
look?
also the beauty shots and the backstage, they're all shot against the whiteboard. The fittings are all done against a whiteboard. I suppose if you're viewing this at a show and it's walking past you, the whole point of a show is when you go there you physically see it and experience it in the setting, and this probably suits the setting of the clothes. But maybe moving forward we're going to have to see the girls walking past a white screen, hopefully not a branded screen but a white screen so you can see it. Oh look, we're getting a bit of colour tripping in. That's a beautiful dress. I like that waisted dress there.
It's very soft. It's like, yes.
It's not a skinny collection at all.
No, not at all. No.
And also he's highlighting that it's not skinny by showing the gap of flesh when he tucks into the trousers with the body line.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yes.
I love the demure neckline. It goes back to this idea of sort of modest dressing, but this idea of wearing something that's really sexy and really comfortable, but also not flashy.
Not at all flashy. Totally, which again is for that sort of powerful, sophisticated woman.
That colour really reminds me of his Rochas patch that we were on before.
Yes.
And in a way, it's nice to see a designer who so clearly loves sort of what he's doing, and he has this complete idea of what women should be. And it's nice to see that confidence. Like he has things that he always turns to, like the trousers and the sheer and the texture and those certain colours. That jacket's really beautiful. That's how it looks through.
Yeah, it's a very strong selection of silhouettes. He's very precise in the message he's communicating. He's very restrained with the palette. He's got strong shoulders, double breasting, draping. He's ticked the boxes of what the theory women want, and I think he's kind of set quite an edgy mood for them. But whether it's a summary collection, I don't know. But
it's very restrained, I think.
It's very, very
but
restrained.
I think it's restrained because he's feeling settled and good about it.
It also feels for an older woman. It's less. I think that's for me the other from the collections I looked at before, which is quite interesting and more androgynous in a way.
And actually looking at that silhouette, I'd almost say it's more of a European muse than
I think it's going.
It's always been a very French aspect, I think, to the way he designed.
Yes.
But even here now, much more.
Well, that was worth the wait, those last looks. Those were good, those young ones.
I think the final dresses were. But it is his dresses that are just so beautiful, isn't it?
I think that jacket's
for me, the best thing were the jackets, the double-breasted jackets this season. I like the long drop waist double-breasted.
So to close up, Jane, to your expertise, it always sells Theyskens theory, and they always every report always says you see all the big buyers on the front row.
Yes.
Can you see this selling?
Yeah, I think it will sell. I think it depends though what it's up against next summer. It doesn't really excite me. There are some pieces that, I could buy them and I'd have them in the wardrobe and then we'd go with other things and I'd wear them. It doesn't really excite me. It doesn't make me think, oh my God, I've got to go out and have that. But maybe that's not what he's trying to do, and that's a personal opinion.
But also, maybe if you tried it on, you'd have a different reaction to it or something. Because I don't think you can judge something.
No, you can't.
It goes back to what we said about online shopping. It's not the same. You go into the shop and it's like you were describing. You try on clothes, and it's then when you go, oh, these are perfectly cut, or this is the perfect height of heel.
Yes.
And I guess that is what he's always built his strength on. Is that women buy a pair of his trousers once, and they'll always buy them again because they've worn them and they realise they're brilliant.
Yes.
It's a nice positive note to end on. So thank you to our panel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.